Good morning, everybody. Here we are live. There's Gord Laws, there's Sia Sangweni, there's me, and there's you. That's pretty much, that's all we need. It's all you need to start your Wednesday. Just the four of us.
Exactly. See, Gareth, Gord, and you, just the four of us. Nothing else you need to do, just the four of us. 5 if there's a passenger with you, or a boyfriend and girlfriend, or significant gender other.
And people in the studio. That's all we need, right?
So here we are. It's Wednesday. It's nighttime. Soon it will be day. How's everybody?
Dude, it's getting cold in the mornings. Jesus, I woke up this morning. I was like, woo. I'm not feeling this. This is something unfamiliar to me as of like
the thing that I'm looking forward to most about winter is feeling it. No, I want it to be cold. I want to be shivery. I want to always be looking for something more to put on. Wow. I don't want to be boiling hot anymore.
But Gord,
people, pale skin European.
It's fat. So
but I mean, it's like saying that you had an 1100 superbike and it was very fast, and now your 750 Ducati is not as fast. You're dealing with different levels of fat. I do identify now as a large human and not a small hut, so that's nice. There's levels
to this. Yes,
I would have been like a young hut, the herd. I would have got butted around the herd a lot. I would be like waiting in the wings for my time.
Right.
So not like a prominent hut that runs its own crime cartel, like an upcoming young understudy one.
Ooh, okay, you're a little classy. I felt very hipster this morning, I have to admit. I woke up a little earlier.
Did you judge someone for having a much better job than you while you were pouring coffee and explaining how flute is your life?
No. I woke up a little earlier than usual, and I went and I opened the blinds in the lounge, and I just got struck by the sunrise. As much as you guys are complaining that it's so dark and cold, I saw the sunrise, and I had dug into last night's salad that I made, but I don't know why. I just saw the lettuce was all my vibe, so there I was just standing looking at the sunrise, chomping on lettuce, thinking this is very hipster as I meditate.
Everybody at some time in their life, young Sia, as an older guy, let me just tell you that it won't be the last time you find yourself at 5:30 a.m. watching the sunrise, eating a salad. You should have gone outside on the balcony and looked for other people also early morning salading. It's quite a normal thing as you get older.
Namaste.
So one quick observation about the show going live to YouTube, which is what we're doing this week and from Monday. Geez, that's great.
He's on the truth.
Yeah. Anytime I speak,
I sneeze when I get aroused.
The answer to me. Yeah. All right.
I sneeze when I get aroused.
Aroused?
Yeah, and it's not 100% of the time, but it's a solid 75% of the time, and it even happens before I know I'm aroused. Like something erotically triggering will happen, and I'll be like, and then 5 seconds later, I start going, there are physical reactions other than this. And I looked into it, I Googled it, and then I've got a very, very friendly relationship with my doctor. So when I was at him, I was like, is this normal? And apparently, it's not. Blood rushes to a number of places. The tip of your nose is one of them. And for some people, it just makes you sneeze. So it's not the only reason I sneeze. It's not like every time I sneeze, it means now I'm secretly aroused. But usually arousal begins. Step 0 is a little...
I thought you were joking.
No, and it's not all that uncommon. I mean, it's obviously one of those rare things that not everyone has. But if you Google it, there's a name for it.
What does that mean? Hey, baby. Let's get it on.
No. It comes long after the hey, baby, and it starts when she's saying, hey, baby, back. Gareth, you're muted there.
Gareth, you're on mute. I think this is your first deposit into the
if anybody sees Gord or hears Gord sneezing, we need to stop the show and give him a minute.
Wow.
Maybe 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how warm it is.
When you go on YouTube Live, it takes a picture automatically at some point on the show and then posts this picture and then I get a notification that the channel's live, right? So it goes out to everyone who's subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, because we're also tracking that to figure out whether, it's worth doing this or not. And, if there are not enough people, I'm just going to can it. But it seems like we're doing really well so far. But the reason that we're going on YouTube, and Basit-san has actually asked this question, is because usually people go the other way around. They start on YouTube and then they eventually build their own channel once, YouTube becomes complicated. But we've decided to do it exactly the opposite way, because there are a whole lot of people who use YouTube daily and who we might be missing out on, and who might be missing out on us. Anyway, it takes this picture at random when you do the show, and it's always a shitty picture, which proves to me what I've always said, that I am the least photogenic person in the universe, because the picture for today is a picture of, I'll tell you what it is, because I'm looking at it right now. I'm sitting there like scowling at the camera, because it was obviously just as I pressed go. Gord is halfway cut off, so there's only half of his face, and then he's going as well, pulling a very sour face, and Sia's not even on the screen. Like it's got your wall. So it must have, that's just such a great picture. If anyone sees that in their notifications, they're going to be thrilled to come back to the show. So if you want to see a shitty picture of each of us every morning, that is the best way to get one. Subscribe.
We are best suited to an audio medium, but hey, I'm all about it. It's just normal that if a photo happens and people aren't prepared for it, that you're going to look like you're having a stroke and or an orgasm in your face in the picture. Like, you can literally be saying, "Good morning, friend," and it'll come out looking as if you're like in the middle of an anesthetized surgery.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Brad says it is nice to get everything in one place on YouTube. And there are a lot of kind of plugins that make YouTube very friendly for both video and audio, which is awesome. By the way, Sia will tell you this now. So Gordo, we record our TV show on a Monday. We had the most irritating Monday ever. I didn't mention it on the show yesterday because I still didn't know how we would resolve the problem. But we record the show on a Monday afternoon, and Sia has to arrange the guests, and it's quite a thing. And there are like 10 people in the control room, and I'm in the studio.
It's quite a serious setup you've got there.
So we get our people online on Skype, and then we have to test with them to make sure they can hear each other. And I'm not going to exaggerate this, even for the sake of a good story, but it took us half an hour to try and iron out the audio problems that we had. My guests could not hear each other, and we've got a terrific show for you tonight. You've got to watch it. It stars Dumo Denga, who's really, really, really smart, just an incisive guy who sees straight to the point. Julieta Talevi, who we've had on before, she's with the Financial Mail, she's very smart too. And then Tony Leon, who's written another book, and who was our ambassador to Argentina for a while. He was the leader of the opposition during Mandela's first term or only term, and even Thabo Mbeki's first term. And he started the DA. He was the founder of the Democratic Alliance, as it's known today. And these three people, they set aside time in their day to talk to us on the show. Yep. And we spent half an hour trying to get them to hear each other, and they can't hear each other on the system. So I'm getting a little bit antsy, and I can see, Sia is as well. So eventually, after 30 minutes, I say to them, listen, guys, if we can't figure out this technical problem, I'm going to call it today, and we just don't have a show.
But Baby Steps doesn't even begin to describe it. So all three of the guests are now on Skype, and then we'll make the tiniest development where Gord can hear Sia, but Sia can't hear Gord. And then we'll have to reboot everything, and then engineers are running about, and then they need to go from the first floor to the third floor.
If I can control things, and I can figure it out myself, and I can press a button or find out what the problem is, then I'm cool. But in this situation, I'm sitting there and I can't do anything, and it's very annoying. So the short story is, I eventually say to my guests, listen, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry we can't record this. I'll get you on the radio show instead, because at least we know we can do that. And I'm out of here. And I take my earpiece out, and I just walked straight to the car. I didn't give a shit what happened.
So you bailed in the end?
Yeah, I stormed out like I had a temper tantrum, and I stormed out. And there was no show. And we had to re-record some stuff yesterday, thank goodness. They They made studio time for us, and we got to do 2 episodes yesterday. But Monday, I was furious. I mean, Sia will tell you, I didn't want to talk to anyone the whole day.
I guarantee I know what happened. Same thing that always happens. You had either Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word open somewhere, and someone clicked somewhere on the document without looking, and then it changed everything, and you didn't know what you did to change it, so you can never change it back. Chernobyl was the result of somebody changing the margin indentation on a Word document in the reactor.
That's something they don't teach you in history.
Have you ever summoned a Microsoft demon? And you don't even know which ritual to perform. Like, you blinked funny while holding your left hand aloft and your right foot was above the air while the temperature was exactly 26, and Microsoft summons a demon, and then Apple Z or Control Z, undo, that just undoes the typing, not the fact that the whole document's inside out and it's now written in hieroglyphics. So that's obviously what you did. Excel, I don't allow it in my home. I have to smudge. I have to sage the house if someone opens Excel.
I'm glad you're protecting yourself.
This is what you're saying now is so funny, because even yesterday, someone was rearranging something at the office on a Word document or an Excel document. I can never tell the difference. And they said to me, "Hey, do you know what to do here?" And I was like, "No.
Sorry to interrupt, Gareth, but just the distinction is that Word documents are able to go out in sunshine for short periods of time, whereas Excel documents will burst into flames if they go out in the day.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't know how to do anything on Excel. I don't know how to do anything there at all.
That's one of the first tests they do with witches to see if they have souls. If they're able to use, Excel. Really? No, and also if they float. Floating and ability to understand Excel are sure signs of witches.
Then they know to burn them.
Yes.
Oh God. Listen, let me tell you something about those programs. I've got, so on my laptop, I've got Excel and Word. I've never used them. Right there at the bottom of the screen here. Then I've got PowerPoint and Pages. You use a lot of those things because you have to do presentations, right, Gord?
Yeah. Also, I mean, I don't mind Microsoft Word. I'm just careful not to look away while anyone clicks anything, because then you can summon the apocalypse. It's Excel that fills me with fear and apprehension. I hate it in every way. And a reality of smoothing over copy, and it's not like a dig at anyone. It's normal enough that I know it's you, not them. But I get sent loads of copy that needs to be reworked in Excel, and pulling the copy out of the Excel document so it can be worked on is more work than working on it. So when I'm in charge of things, occasionally I'm a creative director or an executive creative director. I mean, I don't insist draconianly. Sometimes it's necessary, but I outright refuse to deal with Excel documents. If you have an email to send me or copy to send me, send it in Word or in an email. I'm not pulling it out of a satanic accounting program that hates human happiness. You're going to send me the different sections of your website, we've got the sandal and the flip-flop and the high heel. They don't each need to be a tab in an Excel document for your writer. You can just not do that. Thanks.
I can open those documents, and that is it. There is nothing else I can do with them. If you send any of them to me, I have to be just an observer. And the moment anything changes, I delete and get out, because of precisely what you're talking about. It does feel like you've gone down the tunnel to hell. The moment anything changes on those documents, because your whole screen, and the
margin's gone, and now this is on a different line than this, and there's a big column in the middle you can't get rid of, and you didn't do anything. You just try to click save, and you accidentally missed by half a centimeter, and you don't know quite where. Also, there's things that it's not just buttons and stuff in the menu. It's there's little imaginary margins and markers. You click one, and suddenly it's inside out. You know how Control Z undoes your last typing and stuff? They need a Control F to unfuck the situation where however I was a minute ago, I want to be like that again, please.
Dude. The funniest thing is I've never, thank God, touch wood, had a virus on any of my machines. And I use Apple, so it's much harder to kind of pick those things up unless you click on links and, really obviously stupid stuff. But I've seen in the movies where someone's machine gets infected and there's this thing spreads all over the screen and everything, and they always make it look more dramatic than it is, because it's
cooler than it is. Yeah.
But I always imagine when you talk about these things, and this is a big deal in advertising, right? Because all the advertising people know how to use these programs.
No, they don't. I don't.
Well, I mean, you meant to know.
Yeah.
And when I picture it in my head that you're sitting there at home in front of your laptop trying to get some work done at like 3 a.m. and you click on something and then this huge thing spreads across your screen and that's your face.
It glitches from the one corner to the other and you're like, no. Like, what was that movie? It was actually literally called Hackers, and like the bad hacker guy sits in front of his cinema-sized screen and like types hectically into the keyboard, and like weird color starts to take over the computer. But viruses are far less glamorous. I had one on an Android phone once, and it just wouldn't stop all the time putting pop-up ads, usually for ABSA, on top of anything that I was doing. So I thought, okay, well, this it comes from some app with free advertising. Like, delete all the cheap or free or shitty apps that you maybe don't use. It was like deep in the system. At this stage, I was making Bitfighter, and I was working with some, making Bitfighter the game. The rest of it is still, never mind that for now. But there was an army of really like well-established nerds, and they were like, yeah, this happens, you've got to literally reinstall your phone. So it wasn't just me like panicking and going, there's no solution, and reinstalling the phone. I had to reinstall my phone because of an ad that just on top of anything you do, no matter what program you're in.
That is not glamorous or interesting. That's just shitty. Carl says, Gareth, have you tried any midget porn? That will get you. If you want a virus on your laptop, give the midget porn a go. So what is it with midgets that they infect computers with viruses? Like, I don't think midget is the right word. I think it's small person or short, whatever it is. I'm probably wrong, but whatever the politically correct term for people who are height disadvantaged, like they tend to, you do associate them with viruses, but I don't know if that's a stereotype or if it's true. That is a hideous stereotype, and that is the kind of bigotry that will get you banned from YouTube. So
I don't think we should judge Carl. Let him watch what he wants. I'm not about to try it because viruses, or I would.
Well, Annette says she understands because she spends her life on Excel and hates it.
I'm sorry, Annette.
Listen, it can do, apparently, I mean, again, I'm so rudimentary with this stuff that it's embarrassing. Apparently, it can do some pretty interesting calculations. Like if you highlight a column, it can automatically, figure
launch the
out.
Nukes from Latvia, yeah.
Right. I mean, it can do these things. That was the whole point of it, right? It's supposedly this if you're a master at that stuff, you need to one day sit me down and teach me how, because I don't know the first thing about it.
It's like being a master of making. It's like being a master of making fossil fuel or hydrogenated vegetable oil or corn syrup or petrol.
Speaking of like fossil fuels, every single time, and it's your fault, Gord, every single time anything comes up on the news or on my feed or anywhere about any prehistoric creatures, I immediately think of
the satanic Gord bird.
I always think
prehistoric satanic Gordosaurus. We have to look that thing up so people can see what it is again. It's like gigantic pterodactyl-like bird, which is 80% head, which is usually a great outcome for a jaw, but not if you see this bird. Its head is basically a kayak-sized beak, and it's big enough to swallow you and not have to chew at all.
It's called a
You're very descriptive this morning at works.
What was that, GC?
Sorry, Sia, what did you say? It's very descriptive.
Gord is very descriptive this morning, and it's so on point. A kayak-sized beak says everything.
This is the creature. It is called a Quetzalcoatlus. There's one in comparison with a man. If you're watching
the satanic Gord bird, as we dubbed it a little while ago. Now that thing could just look at it. Imagine its entire spearing mechanism alone is twice your size.
Well, its beak probably starts off at a very sharp tip, which would be sharp for it, but for us it would look like
quite blunt. Yeah, it would be like it being impaled with a street pole.
Correct. And as it expands, so will you, and so will the hole in you that it is made.
So, exactly. The thing goes in as one, like a closed pair of scissors. Then gores you through your middle, and then it opens its mouth and splits you Think about it. It's just got to peg you through the middle and then laugh, and you'll be torn into thousands of pieces.
Oh, Gord, what sound do you think it makes?
And you'll be like, and then it goes, and then, and it flies away.
Here's a disturbing picture. This is why you got to have us on YouTube. Here's a disturbing picture of one eating one of our ancestors.
That's
but the scariest part of this is that these things flew, and they were huge, and they were scary looking, and they were definitely meat eaters. So
yeah, and like pterodactyls and the early flying dinosaurs, I don't know what genus this thing falls into, and there's flying dinosaurs, and then I think pterodactyls are flying something else, but those flying reptile sort of prototype animals, pterodactyls and the like, they had like a very inefficient way of flying. It was similar to how bats fly, although bats have incorporated a lot more gliding and efficiency. Like a bird sort of gets lift and then uses aerodynamics to float along, whereas that thing beats the shit out of the air until it's flying. It's like, so it's the size of like a small school bus with wings larger than it, and it literally doesn't even need to be aerodynamic. It's just so strong that it has a tantrum hard enough that it goes in the air. So when that thing's coming down, it's falling like the stone that it is. It's falling like the hippo-sized body with bigger head, and it's so essentially this combi with a spike on the front is lowering down to you in a fall. So it's not gliding down like a eagle into the water to catch the bird. It's falling a story at a time, clapping the air. So it's like, and it just descends upon you in falls.
And then how big are their droppings?
About the size of me, depending on how long ago it was.
Imagine that falling on you from the sky.
So I want us to talk in the next half hour about the Mars rover, because I know you've been watching the landing and everything else, and you're such a space nerd.
Such a space cadet.
Just before we do, though, I want to do some headlines, just so we don't get left behind and we know what's going on in the world. So apparently, Putco, Putco buses, we spoke about them and how they were going into a provisional liquidation and insolvency. They basically declared the business was finished because there was no work for them during the lockdown. And now that we're back to level one, Putco is thinking of maybe trying to save parts of the business, and they were going to fire a whole lot of their people, obviously, because they don't need all these bus drivers when there's no one on the buses. They transport more than 210,000 passengers daily. So if they do go out of business, that is really bad news for 210,000 people a day who need them. But the National Union of Metal Workers are vindicated because they say Putco has confirmed it will not go ahead with retrenchments. So I'm not sure exactly how the business model is expected to work here, but they had plans to retrench 214 employees, and those plans have been cancelled because the union obviously got what it wanted. Job rotation will stop on the 15th of March. NUMSA says the company has been presented with alternatives. Wouldn't you like to know what those alternatives are? Includes the employment of skilled artisans instead of outsourcing maintenance work. But for all intents and purposes, it appears that Putco is still around and they are still in business.
I mean, look, if a bus company can be named Starbus and still survive for many, many years. Have you seen one of like the leading South African bus companies is Starbus, but it's Stabus, and like the Starbus, the Starbus bus. Yeah, I swear to God, you see them every day. Okay, bottom line half is going to kick in hard, and you're going to see 3 the next time you drive anywhere. It's a brand of bus, very common, South African staple, like a Putco. You see them your whole life, and they're called Starbus, but it's spelt one word, no spaces, hyphens, or anything to help clarify. It's Stabus, Starbus, and Starbus have been fine. And Putco are in trouble, and their name reminds me of a delightful children's cartoon where the little anthropomorphic talking bus goes, pat, 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 pat. Oh, it's the Putco bus. Oh, and it's Starbus.
Now there's the Starbus bus. Great. I'll never be able to unsee that.
You know the one I'm talking about, Sia?
Yeah, I've seen them.
I've never seen one.
A Starbus? Oh, come on, Gareth.
Maybe
as soon as you see one, you'll know.
All right. Well, when I see one, I'll take a picture and send it to you.
So Putco are in trouble, or are they trying to prevent being in trouble? I mean, where are they at now?
So they clearly are in trouble, but now the unions have prevailed upon them and they won't be able to fire any workers. So they might be in more trouble. Who knows? We're just going to have to watch this space, because running these businesses at the moment is like walking on a tightrope, and any bad decision could spell the end of your business. And it's interesting.
Any business just about at the moment.
Yeah, we still need buses in this country because we have such horrible public transport. As I said, 210,000 people a day. So there's a gap. If Putco do fail, then someone else will have to come in and pick up the slack, There'll be a massive business opportunity. In other news, Brian Molefe was in front of the Zondo Commission yesterday. You know who he is, right? He's the former Eskom CEO. He defended Eskom's decision to buy coal from the Guptas at Tegeta for more than 400 Rand per ton, when it refused to pay Glencore, the alternative company, 500 Rand per ton. I think Cyril Ramaphosa had something to do with Glencore at the time. You see, these politicians are all
I hear Glencore, and I fully realize I could be wrong. Like, it could be it's named after the physics, like the geographical landscape feature at Glen, or maybe it was founded by the Glen family. But I just imagine an oak called Glen who decided to start his company and call it Glencore. And I'm always like, I guarantee you Glens are doers. Now, again, I know huge assumptions, but I think you'd be right 80% of the time when it's Dave Core, Glen Core, Nick Tech,
no, you're right,
that it's just named after the oak that started it. And you're like, I bet you Glen's a douche. Again, pure assumption. Glen might be lovely. Apologies, right. Real Glen, if you're a nice person. But you sound like a douche.
Well, Brian Molefe was there, and he was talking about how state capture, the state capture inquiry wants to know why Tegeta took ownership of the Optimum coal mine and started supplying coal to the Hendrina power station. And Brian Molefe was trying to explain it. He said that Glencore was not forced to sell Optimum coal mine. He refused to conclude an agreement that was already in motion when Glencore was pleading that the price increase would save it. He said that the price increase that Optimum wanted was preposterous and illegal, and the fiduciary duty that he had was to Eskom, not to them. So there was a whole lot going on. And remember, we wouldn't have even known about any of this if the Guptas hadn't overplayed their hand and landed for their wedding at Waterkloof.
He really puts the douche in fiduciary. Yeah, I mean, we made one of my favorite ads that I've ever made. That rare occasion where advertising is quite rewarding and you make something you're proud of, as adverts myself and a team that I worked with made for Business Day in 2012, I think, or possibly 13. And it dealt with all of that kind of like excess and total do what you like-itness that applied to the Guptas. Like, the process of a Zimbabwean or any other quote unquote illegal in the country just getting pulled off a bicycle, never being allowed to tell anyone where he went, and kept for like 2 weeks at the border before being deported with any due process. But if you're a foreigner with no passport who's friends with the government, with the Guptas, you can come into the country more easily than a South African can. So what gives you more rights when you're a foreigner, money or who you know?
What was the ad?
For Business Day, understand your country or lose it. Just, there were 3 ads, and the one about the Gupta air landing thing was basically just saying, as a foreigner, you can have more rights than a South African or less. It just depends how much money you've got and who you know.
Hey, we haven't spoken to Elson in a while. Elson, what do you got on your mind, dude?
Good morning. How's it, Tim?
Hey, what's happening?
Good morning.
How's it?
Elson, this is where you talk.
All right, cool. Seems I've got a bad signal. This thing was freezing up. Sorry to take you back a couple of... I'm not quite sure if I still have you guys.
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
Awesome. Sorry to take you back a couple of podcasts back. I was listening to a podcast when Sia was talking about Bobby Shmurda being released from prison, and nobody seemed to know who Bobby Shmurda was.
I still don't.
Ordinarily, I would not have paid attention.
Yeah, he sounds a lot like Tekashi 6ix9ine. In my, I went and looked into it, and he just everyone says he's like Tekashi, but his style. I'm like, if Tekashi but your style, then you know.
Almost
because Gareth and I also know who Tekashi is.
No idea.
Almost exactly like Tekashi, except he might be a little dumber. So he's got Gareth. You might look this up. He's got a song called Hot Nigga. I think it was a single that he released, and he blew up from that song. Now, the damn thing that he did is in that song, you know how rappers normally rap about the money, the women, and the crime they do.
Yes.
So he did that in the song. And unfortunately for him, the FBI decided to look into some of the lyrics and open up an investigation. And based off that investigation, they actually did realize that they had killed a couple of people from a rival gang. His gang is called GS9. So what's also crazy is in the second verse, he mentions the people that he was with. Three people.
So in a strong field, he's the dumbest rapper.
I mean, it's up there with him and Tekashi. But bro, have you checked out? I mean, he's a legit producer. He produced a lot of the second Method Man Redman album. Crank Lucas is well respected as an actual producer and an MC, but he has a comedy channel where he does like rappers be like this in the studio and like humorous songs. He's got a really good one. It's genuinely informative that explains space-time and gravity. But he's got another one about rappers be saying too much in the studio. And he's recording a song. He's both the producer and the MC having a conversation. And he's recording a song outlining all the details of the illegal shit that he does in his life, including like the welfare that his aunt is on that she shouldn't be. So yeah, don't be outlining the crime. But check out Crank Lucas. Anybody that's looking for some entertaining musical shit.
I mean, you're really educating us here because I had no idea who this dude was, and even up to now, I was completely, I saw it come up once or twice on people that I follow's Instagram, and I was like, I have no interest in figuring out more about this dude. But he sounds like he's probably one of the dumbest people in the whole world.
He's so crap that he inspired the crappest rapper of all time to be as crap as he was. Because Tekashi Snitch 9 is like the crappest thing to happen in hip hop other than Lil Yachty ever. Like he literally is the pale horse of the apocalypse for hip hop. And it's amazing that the crappiest, most craptacularly crap rapper who screwed up his life the most craptacularly was inspired by an even worse dickhead.
Well,
and you know what's crazy is one of the three people. Bobby took a deal, but one of the three people got 130 years.
Oh my God!
How do judges give you 130 years? Why don't they just say life?
Imagine how furious that person is with this idiot Shmurda that he put him in his song, because he would have got away with it probably.
Right,
but don't you serve like, I think 20 or 25 years, and then it's like all running concurrently. So it really like whether it's 100, and I'll stand to be corrected here. My understanding is that whether it's 130 years or 5,362 years, you're eligible for parole in 15 or 20 years anyway.
I think if they once you get into,
but I also could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
Yeah. I think once you get into the hundreds, there's no parole.
So all right, Tim. Good seeing you, people.
Thanks, dude. Nice to hear from you as always.
Thanks for that lesson, Elton.
Thanks, bro.
See?
Yeah, he's right. He's right, though. He's 100% right.
I'm gonna start rapping too now.
Well, you don't have to if you want to. If the Shmurda doesn't and 6ix9ine doesn't, they just make nasal sounds and occasionally go, yeah. Like mumble rap is the art of trying to say. It's like the minimum possible saying something before you didn't say it. Like try to say like, yo, we in here, and it's like, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Because this is what was happening while we were talking to Elson. So Basitsana comes on and she goes, I didn't miss Elton. He talks too much. Then she changes her mind. She goes, okay, I take it back. Elson also just taught me something I didn't know today. My bad. So you see, we're all learning, even me and Basitsana this morning.
Ironic that 75% of the comments so far are Basitsana, and one of them is about people talking too much. Running commentary. This was nice. Didn't like this sentence. Gordon, be quiet. Gareth, talking too much. Elson, talk too much. Like, man, you type fast.
So, one other news story that it's an ongoing story. Guess what? There's shit in Nigeria, and it has to do with the Boko Haram. So I'm not even going to go into detail there, not because I don't care about the story, but because you've heard it before. and there's no new update. It's the same stuff happening over and over again, and the Nigerian government have no handle on it. They don't know what to do. In American news, Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, is...
Sorry, GC, just before you start this one, I know you don't want to go into the details, but can you give someone on a news diet the broad outline? What was there? A bombing, a shooting, a public beheading? The quick
Every single week for the last 8 weeks that we've been doing the show, there has been a story about Boko Haram either kidnapping girls from a school, shooting innocent civilians, trying to take over a town. And
just the huge, basically.
Basically, it's the same story every week with a slight,
that's horrific. Sorry, please continue to the next one.
Well, it's just very depressing, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because there isn't much more to be said. The only update for this week is that hundreds of girls who were kidnapped from a boarding school last week have been freed. So there's some progress there being made. But a whole lot of other girls are still being held captive. So 317 girls were abducted. And they've released a few of them, but not all of them. So,
I'm sorry I asked, but it's just it's just the huge, basically. Sorry, what was the less depressing news story? My bad.
Well, this is depressing for Andrew Cuomo, who is the governor of New York. He is under huge pressure to resign as governor because you remember he was the hero. This time last year, Governor Andrew Cuomo was the guy who everyone in America was looking to as America's governor, because he was having daily press conferences about how great he was at managing coronavirus, and his state was going to do things better than anyone else. Well, he's being fired now, or he's in the firing line. He hasn't been fired. He has to step down because he made inappropriate moves on some women who worked for him, and some women who didn't even work for him. Let me just sketch the scenario as briefly and as succinctly as I can. He is a hot-blooded Italian man, and a lot of those guys are going to be getting into trouble in the next few years because they flirt with everyone, and it's part of.
And this being a general stereotype, of course, there are Italian men who are very well mannered. We're talking about New York Italians, stereotypically.
Yeah. This guy he's the stereotype that you would have expected.
Yeah, he's the stereotype that the stereotype's based on. You always meet that person in any stereotype.
Great money, come over here. Let me. That is a nice dress you got on. Whoa, what are you doing? What are you saying? And that kind of thing. So, Andrew Cuomo,
Gareth, he's the one with the alleged nipple ring, right?
Yeah, he's got a
Chris?
Nipple piercing. Yeah, that's him, Andrew. So we know that because he was on TV one night and he was wearing just a plain white shirt, and you could see the nipple ring pushing through the shirt. It was hilarious.
That's gangster, though.
So Andrew Cuomo, who was New York and America's governor, and everybody loved him. He
won an Emmy for it, right?
He won an Emmy, correct. And he was going on like CNN and joking with his brother Chris Cuomo, who does a TV show on CNN. And the two of them were like making fun of. It was like a bit of a Mutt and Jeff show that the two were doing. And now Andrew Cuomo is in big trouble because he has a third woman who's accused him of inappropriate behavior. And by the way, this inappropriate behavior is not it's not what you think it is. Because when you hear this now, you immediately assume, oh, this guy must have raped a woman or, sexually manhandled a woman or anything. So the first one was basically him at a wedding where he put his hand on someone's lower back. That's all, right? He then did ask if he could kiss her. She said no. That was it. Now, that passes for the same kind of thing as sexual misconduct now, which is bizarre, right? Very bizarre. There's a lot going on here that people are not telling. And at the moment, you've got the believe all women crowd on one side saying, this guy's got to go, he's toxic. By his own standards, he was one of those believe all women people. Because remember when they had Judge Kavanaugh appear in front of the Supreme Court for his position on the Supreme Court bench, Andrew Cuomo was one of the people who said, no, you got to believe all women. So this guy's not an appropriate candidate for the Supreme Court. If you have those standards, how funny it is that you'll be judged by them later on. So in some ways, I'm not sympathetic to him. In other ways, I am, because you've got people on the other side who say, no, you can't believe all women. These are not serious allegations. They may be creepy and inappropriate, but they're not sexual harassment in the classical definition. And we've got to decide as a human race where we go from here, because if we don't have very clear lines, if it is inappropriate for someone to say, could I kiss you? And you say no, and then you don't kiss them. Is that sexual harassment? Or is that just a guy, hot-blooded man taking a chance? Because we've got to figure out what, there's no way to navigate this for anybody. Either it's going to mean that none of us ever hit on each other ever again, and we basically die out as a species because no one's allowed to make a move, or it means that everything is acceptable, which is obviously not a way to go either.
You know, when you have an effervescent like a Carenza or a Barocca or something, and you've got to pour the effervescent so that it settles down and makes the right amount of juice. But if you pour too fast or pouring too much water, it like goes totally chaotic and overflows out the side, and it's a screw up. I see this whole thing of like the gender politics and those people screaming on social media where only their friends who already agree are listening, all of this crap. It's like a process that needs to happen, figuring out the boundaries, and everybody is like not even nearly self-aware enough to know the contradictions and the hypocrisy in all of their viewpoints across the board, everybody. So this process is like the pouring too much water too hard into a concoction of Carenza and Barocca. And I'm just sitting back going, man, I'm loving my news diet that I don't know about any of this shit except once a week, watching the whole thing explode over. And it has to eventually settle to a bit of calm and calm, rational place. And then you see what's left and go, right, where are we now? Because right now it's just chaos and no one's thinking.
Gareth, do you have the references of what he did to the other woman? Or allegedly did to the other woman?
Well, it's a similar sort of thing, but the worst part about the other allegation is that it happened at work, and it was someone who worked with him, and he asked her questions like, "Do you sleep with older women? With older men?" And this borders. I understand.
That's pretty damn creepy, though.
I would understand if I were a woman and I were at work, and my boss said to me, "Do you sleep with older men?" What he was really inferring, and how unacceptable that is, and how inappropriate it is for the workplace. But again, does this measure up to the kind of gender-based violence that we see in South Africa? No, obviously not. And we need to. I know that this is a difficult thing to do, but if we're going to take these things seriously, and we're going to treat them with the respect that they deserve, each allegation has to be measured on its own merits. This does not mean that if you've felt awkward and uncomfortable by being hit on by someone that you didn't want to be hit on, that it's the same as rape from the woman's point of view. And from the man's point of view, you've got to know very clearly what the rules are so we don't end up effervescing out of the glass like Gord said. As a guy, you need to know these are the parameters of what is acceptable in terms of flirting. These are the kinds of things I can do, and I can ascribe it to being attracted to someone, trying to make a move on them.
What on earth?
I couldn't reach the mute button quickly.
Did you just become aroused?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Can you replicate that? Do you sneeze like that every time, Sia? I'm just going to get a picture of Chad Leclos out quick, and we're going to test something.
I was trying to keep it in, and then I was trying to reach for the mute button, and that was the result.
Blackie Chan sneezes more like intimidatingly than you, yeah.
I swear we were going somewhere with this conversation, but I can't remember now.
Around in circles, because it's the same crap every day, every week with gender politics. It's like, let it effervesce. And try not to get effervesced yourself.
Well, as we were with Andrew Nippelring Cuomo, yes.
The point is that Cuomo is in big trouble, and he has, according to some people, to go. And we will see if he can survive the storm, because it's all going to depend on whether his political alliances prove to come to the party and stand up for him, or whether or not they decide to abandon him. If his political acquaintances and alliances come through, he'll be fine. He'll stay as governor of New York because he'll still have a political utility. If not, he's out. We'll see what happens. But I do think that we need very carefully to figure out the parameters of this going forward. Otherwise, we're screwed as a human species, because none of us will ever have sex with each other again. And already, millennials and Gen Zs are having the least amount of sex that is measurable by any generation that we have statistics on. The least amount of sex. So something to think about.
Don't worry, there's still my age bracket and demographic is still having sex, so that's fine.
Well, lucky you until someone decides that it's too much.
Can the middle-aged, ideally divorced and sexually adventurous women of South Africa not get these same issues, please? Just carry on as you are, ladies. You're doing fine, and it's perfect. Don't be like the millennials.
Score.
I got that funk, baby, and you know my name is Gord. I'm gonna show you something meaty, shaped like a sword.
Okay.
We
were getting a funk song going on. Impromptu funk's what we do here.
Sorry, Gareth, we did not hear what you said.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go with the flow this morning. I don't even know where to start with this one. But here's something that Gord, I think you'll take quite seriously. Dr. Seuss is now racist, so his books have been pulled.
Oh, but he has been for ages. He was racist in like the 20s and 30s when he was doing political cartoons, and then when he became a peace with the Japanese activist post-World War II, he drew some political cartoons misrepresenting Chinese people and people from around the world. But yeah, this has flared up many times. Also, having grown up as a young boy himself, it's completely outrageous that most of his lead characters are young boys. But unless there's something new,
no.
He drew people of ethnic groups funny when he was in his 20s. Yeah,
we've got to cancel Dr. Seuss. So
they've been trying to do it since the 50s.
I'm sorry, parents, but if you've been reading The Cat in the Hat to your children, you'll have to stop because.
Yeah, but the thing is with it though, like again, I've read Theodore Geisel's authorized biography, and it covers the fact that when he started doing cartoons, he was an advertising person until he only started doing children's book in his late 30s. He was in advertising before that, and he was also one of the people that made like educational cartoons along with legends from Warner Brothers and stuff. Corporate private snafu, the soldier that screws everything up to teach troops not to do that, and then he. So before his books, he was a political cartoonist, and the Japanese were an enemy of the States. So he would draw them in a kind of non-flattering way. And in his childhood, because it was in the 20s, he learned to cartoon from the political cartoons were very powerful then. And he learned to do it from looking at what was being drawn by the prevailing names of the time, who he wanted to be like. And they drew people in certain ways. And he acknowledged it later and said, yes, that was the prevailing thing of the time. I didn't know any better. I was a young man. And so now I'm sorry, and I don't do it anymore. And like 100 years later, people are still making a thing of it. He carried on doing books until his 70s. He did them for 45 years, and this stuff was 15, 20 years before his first book.
Well, let's cancel him, because clearly our standards today are so high, and we're so perfect, and we've all sprung from our parents' union, and we've sprung out of our mother's womb perfect. We are perfectly politically correct. We won't ever make a mistake, and future generations will never judge us by our own stupidity, of course. So we'll go back and we'll just judge every other generation by their stupidity. This is bound to lead to pain and torment. You will be evaluated if you're one of these cancel people.
And there was one early book where it's about
someone will look at all the work you've done, and they'll go, "Ooh, this person needs to be cancelled." So by your own rules, just like Andrew Cuomo has discovered, you will be judged, and it's going to be very, very nasty. Good luck.
There's even a Dr. Seuss book where he was traveling around. What's that?
He writes children's books. Let's remember that in the time he was writing these books, everyone was doing racist stuff. I mean, I read Asterix.
In terms of his books, it's not even. It's not there's not in the children's books. It's the early political cartoons, and there's one book, I forget what it's called, where early on, and it was about you'll go to all magical, not other places you'll go. That was his farewell book. But there's one where you go everywhere and you see everything, and there's weird animals and weird people from all around the world. And he drew the Chinese people, with the triangular hats and stereotypically. And this was ages ago, early in his career. They went back and redid those. They edited those books so that the more modern versions don't have different drawings. So this was addressed, publicly spoken on, and so I'm thinking if something's come out that he was doing something terrible in his private life back in the day, that's one thing, but the content of the books.
Let me just point out that at the same time as these books were being circulated, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was one of the most progressive presidents in American history, was actually locking Japanese people in concentration camps in the United States.
And Dr. Seuss was an extremely outspoken opponent of that. That was his political cause. Don't do that.
Nobody in the world is perfect. But if you think that a children's book with a slightly stereotypical version of how a Chinese person looks is much
from the
worse
30s
than a president actually putting people in concentration camps because they're Japanese, you have a huge problem. You have a massive disconnect between reality and your own idea of reality. And you need to go and sit down with a shrink.
No one's taking into account the obvious moralistic messages and the kindness and inclusion and treat people the same, and a small person is the same worth as a big person in the subtext in every story, which is always inclusive, caring. There's no Dr. Seuss's books are profoundly moving, and like they teach you kindness and right from wrong and courage and all of those kinds of things.
We are throwing the baby out with the bathwater on this one. This is how it works these days. You have to be perfect, and Dr. Seuss was not perfect, so we will lose all of that beautiful stuff because he drew a Chinese person. Sorry. That's how it works.
Yeah, it's a bummer. At least I read them all as a child and managed to get a love of reading and subsequently writing and all of that out of it.
Over. Like, the Bachelor is going to be pulled off TV. I know Sia's massively hurt by that because...
See, this I'm far more interested in.
No, well, we have something closer to home. You know, the Love Island South Africa premiered on Sunday night. I think it was.
Yeah. And
it's been airing every evening since. I haven't gotten to watch it yet, but it started off with people. It's not a surprise because even we were commenting on it a few weeks ago, or ever since it was announced that there'd be a South African version about diversity and whether or not how many black people there'd be versus white people and how they would split it up to represent South Africa. There ended up being like 2-ish people of color, and the rest of the cast was white. That already set people off. But then I feel bad saying this because I even know people at the production company and I don't understand how it slipped up, but it is a very bad production overall. Like there were audio issues, there were editing things. No, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of mistakes were made and maybe they were rushing to just get it on screen, that these things weren't properly looked at. But even last night, I was talking to some friends who watched it and they were saying there were some audio issues. But anyway, it is sponsored. The show is sponsored by a company in South Africa, and they pulled out as of yesterday afternoon.
You know, if you're the company that sponsors Love Island and you pull out.
Okay.
You're hoping everybody on Love Island pulls out.
They revoked their sponsorship.
Is that what you call it? I'm like, don't worry, baby. You can trust me. I'll revoke my sponsorship in time.
What is the company's name? Because they are either really stupid or they're extremely slow. So either way, they're not going to look good. So it's almost worse that they pulled out.
Please tell me it's Durex who pulled out.
Lotto Star revoked their sponsorship on
so they
Love
threw
Island.
all their chips in on Love Island, and at the last second they pulled them out
because of the lack
bet big. They bet big on Love Island.
It was because of the lack of diversity. And then Mnet released a statement yesterday evening saying, "You called us out on the lack of diversity and production quality in our first episode of Love Island South Africa. We're sorry we didn't meet our usual standards on both counts. We are working tirelessly to fix things and to deliver the magic you deserve."
All right.
Yes. Well, if Love Island working perfectly is the magic you deserve, mate, then enjoy it.
And you're going to get disappointed in life a lot. So we'll get to this. I want to talk about this a bit, and if you've watched the show, then let us know, because it sounds like a disaster from the moment they pressed play on this Love Island. But let's have a look. I mean, if you've got any comments or questions or points of view that you want to throw in there, if you've seen the show, I'd love to hear what you have to say. And you can call us. You can get on the show live, 079-748-2090, cliffcentral.com. Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you grunt when getting out of the car? Creak when getting out of bed? Do you walk into a room and forget why? Are you having trouble in the sack? Is the hump in a slump? Join me, Chris Haven-Smith, and Dr. Mark on the T-Health Show every Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. where we talk to medical and allied professionals about those serious and not so serious medical lifestyle issues. The T-Health Show, sponsored by the T-Clinic. The T-Health Show is available on podcasts. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
We live in a rapidly changing world, but how we get paid remains stubbornly outdated.
We have this archaic payday cycle.
The Future of Pay is a podcast series that explores the impact that the current salary status quo has on South Africans.
When you are desperate, you will do anything to get that money to put food on your table for your family by tomorrow evening.
And how innovative startup SmartWage is looking to change things.
There's a very simple problem here. People are waiting till the end of the month to get paid, and the impact is that they can't afford expenses that come up during the middle of the month.
The Future of Pay, brought to you by SmartWage, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Live, cliffcentral.com on a Wednesday morning. It's the 3rd of March. Gord and Sia are with me. It's a pretty good start to the day, even though it is getting a bit chillier as we head into March and towards autumn. A few things that are worth mentioning this morning. We're going to be joined later on by Rich Mulholland. And you know Rich from ages ago. He's been a part of the Cliff Central family from the get-go. He has a business called Missing Link, but he's also an expert in being able to do your Zoom calls and being able to do video conferencing a whole lot better, because people just use the bare minimum and they kind of don't even know what the tricks and tips are that you could put into place to be able to do them better. And I spoke to Rich a while ago and he said, why don't I just come on the show and do this? It's taken us a while, but we've got him on today. So I'm very excited to have Rich Mulholland back a little bit later on. So a lot of people talking about Love Island this morning, because even though it's a kind of ridiculous TV show, these things become super important in South Africa's culture, because it becomes a mirror against which people measure themselves. You know, there's a lot of very vapid and stupid stuff going on in the world. But for people who have nothing to do, these things matter. And it matters clearly to some people that Love Island is not diverse enough. It matters to some people that Love Island is a serious thing, even though most of us would accept that it's completely stupid. All I know about this show is that it was a very big deal in the UK when Sia and I went there on a trip in, 2018?
Mm-hmm.
Like the biggest show. And it was the most popular show on UK TV. There was just a deluge of talk about it in every place that you possibly went, from the important people to the stupid people to the people in between. And in South Africa, Love Island launched on Sunday, and it's gone really badly. according to Sia, he just told us before the break. He said that the main sponsor is pulled out, which is hilarious, but
revoked their sponsorship.
So Basitsana says, did you guys see that Love Island are bringing the emergency blacks in order to bring up the diversity quota, which is hilarious.
I saw that term as well last night on social media, and I didn't. Yeah, I can't really comment because I haven't watched it.
In terms of emergency backup contestants, regardless of why they're being emergencyed in, do you think they have like a bunch of people on standby who've already been vetted and already agreed, who were like the almost made it and have agreed to be on standby, or they in a day have to go find hot people who happen to be of a certain color?
They've definitely got emergency people.
It's about numbers, right? Like the whole thing, it sounds like it's all about numbers. But even with the show, like to be on the show, you have to be above an 8 looking and below 80 IQ. So you got to just find...
I've got to be honest with you, I haven't seen the contestants at all. So I need to do a bit of research. Now I'm interested, so now I'm going to go and look at it. But this is crazy because now they're going to import a whole lot of emergency blacks, obviously, which is extra funny. So you know what's funnier than someone being caught out for not being diverse or appearing to be racist or anything else is the minute they try to remedy that and they end up looking even worse. So I'm just going to watch this with interest. What do we do?
I don't know how they're going to win with this.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Like, I mean, when I say I don't know why people care so much, I mean, it's not meant to be like a high and mighty position. I struggle to like even stay on top of who's upset about what. And I think to myself, like in this day and age, like, can you imagine, you remember that Bad Brad and Ferdy and all the other dickheads in the first Big Brother? I think that house had like also like one colored person, one black person, everyone else was white. But like, can you imagine in today's age of social media, if they try to do any of that shit, or like Survivor South Africa, like, people are just sitting there waiting, like I'm on lockdown, work's shit, I'm either stuck with someone I hate or I haven't been laid in ages. I just can't wait to find out what I hate about the show that starts next week. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but I hate something and I'm going to rip it to pieces because now my life has something happening in it.
But come on, folks, we knew this was coming already. As soon as Love Island South Africa was announced, we spoke about it on the show to say diversity and race is going to be an issue. And clearly now the fact that the channel and the production company have to appease sponsors, you could say that they were being disingenuous with the casting, but at least have an Indian person, a colored person, a black person, and some white people. Hey,
you got to have everybody.
Someone who's down with the swirl as well. I'm half Dominican and half black. Something in 2021, you knew this was going to be an issue. You know what? Even slide in someone non-binary.
Yeah,
as well.
You see, like I enjoy. I'm a full menu man myself. So I like, if I was. I know Love Island works differently than the Bachelor, right? In the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, a butt or a lady butt are kind of presented with a menu of people, and they've got to kind of decide which one they want. That's my understanding. Love Island, I know, works differently. But if I'm the butt and I'm looking at all the Bachelorettes, and there's not like something from every corner of the rainbow, I'm going to be like, if I want to go pick a white person, I can go to Hatfield.
Well, I don't know.
I want to go to the whole buffet platter and try a little bit of everything, and in the end, be like, I could make a truly informed decision here.
It's an impossible thing to manage because you also want stuff to be natural. So you see, you've got love in the mix here, and the one thing that the multicultural, diverse crew they really want to do is they want to see everything more or less equal. They want to see representation everywhere, which is good. But when you're dealing with love, sometimes people have preferences. Like sometimes people prefer bigger, smaller, blonder, brunetta, brown eyes, big eyes, small eyes. Sometimes people prefer hairy or not hairy. Sometimes people prefer
hairy, I hope.
Big booty. Sometimes people prefer big titties.
I find that people who like big booties generally are more honest. Apparently, they cannot lie.
But my point is, Gord, if you take this seriously for a second, so that I can just get it out of my system. You cannot legislate what people are to like and not to like. And if your show is about love, it's going to be trouble. You know what I mean?
But you know, while I've been binning all of this for being silly and frivolous, and why would anyone care, and all of the rest. And again, I'm new to this now, so my input is limited, except that if it is a show representative of South African dating and whatever, and there's meant to be a broad mix of people, it has to be representative. So like, it's on the one hand, people getting so upset about it as if it's like some, you know, white supremacist political statement from a clandestine organization controlling the world, or just someone who just did their job really badly on that particular month. It is massively short-sighted in South Africa to not be representative of the population to start. What happens after is a bunch of bullshit, and why does anyone care? But I can see how people are pissed off if it was like a whiteness fest on South Africa's Love Jewel Party Island.
Someone specifically said they went to Virgin Active and just hauled the first 6 people they saw.
Oh my God. Is that what it looks? That's funny. Is that what it looks like? It's a butts galore.
Someone's tweet, not mine. I have not watched it. So
the first people they found at a Virgin Active.
Just you. Yeah, let's go.
Man, it is embarrassing. I mean, like, it's embarrassing that we've got to this stage and no further. You know, it's kind of, there's a no-win situation here too that we have to take cognizance of. Like, you cannot win this argument, because there are going to be so many opinions. Plus, I know that it's ridiculous. A lot of people are like, why are you even talking about a show that is so pointless and stupid? But this is what it's come to, is everything is controversial these days. Everything. Even dumb Love Island is controversial. Nothing is left to just being a TV show.
I like white butts, and I cannot lie. You other brothers can't deny. When a girl from Kempton comes in the room and she really catches your eye, you get sprung. When I put up, oh baby. She's going off to Boardman's is where I was going to go with that. I like white butts. I just can't lie.
I was kind of here for that, Gord.
Yeah, that was very good, Gordo. I like that a lot. Oh, man.
But you see, you're frozen on my screen, or you're frozen on everybody's screen.
No.
Frozen beautifully, though. You're not in mid-stroke face, at least.
Yeah, good point.
Restart my video and see if I can get that working. All right, well, we want to take your thoughts on this because it's kind of crazy. Carl says, how does Mnet get this so wrong? In 2021, how do they do this? With everything that's going on, how do you possibly get this wrong? They're morons. Andre says, I'm a bum man. I appreciate a generous booty. And Denise
Thanks,
says,
Andre.
the first episode of Love Island was clearly an anticlimax, which is hilarious. I don't know why my camera isn't working. This is not ideal.
And you are the Team Handsome one.
Our first time on YouTube. No, I'm just trying to figure out why it wouldn't be working. My little light isn't coming on or anything. So I don't know what's happening.
Okay, maybe team or handsomeness.
Yes.
Maybe I should just restart it, huh? Should I come back in?
Masculine, rugged.
No, if you restart, then we're going to be kicked out.
No, well, I can't do that. All right. Well, you'll just have to deal with not seeing me for a little while. I'll try and reach on the side. All right, let's get into a whole bunch of other stuff that is in the news. I know Sia's got some things to tell us as well. And Gordo, you want to talk about a couple of things. You always have an agenda. Rich Mulholland will be joining us.
Rich, legend.
No, just now, yeah. He'll be with us at past, so we'll find out from him how we can better use things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and whatever else you use to do your meetings, because God almighty, those things are boring. I'm so sick of online meetings, but it is going to be the way of the future for a while. He
says, ironically, while we're essentially having one.
Yes.
I know, but it's different with the show, because with the show, we're talking about stuff, hopefully, that we really care about. A lot of the time in meetings, you're not talking about stuff that you're that interested in, or you're listening to someone who's going through those same processes that made actual meetings boring.
No, I got to say, there's pros and cons to everything, but I love a video meeting compared to having to get into an overcrowded fish tank boardroom with 14 people, of whom 3 are contributing to the meeting, and the 2 that really need to be there aren't there, and you it starts late and then someone has to leave. Like getting the team together meetings in the physical realm, especially when by no means does that meeting could have been an email, or by no means does everyone need to be in it. Give me a screen full of people absentmindedly not listening every day, where I can just get off my couch or out of anywhere in my lounge and have a meeting. It's the best.
And don't you?
Well, nothing's ever going to be perfect though, because even with virtual meetings, there's so many hurdles every now and then.
Don't you
so
find
much
that
better?
These online meetings are much quicker as well. Like people get to the point faster.
Yeah.
Look, there's pros and cons, and everybody's still getting used to it. But I think if you, outside of the context of the pandemic, and just take going to a location, somebody's office, either yours and people have to arrive or vice versa, and having a meeting in a full room. There's occasional times where as a creative or as somebody trying to structure the plan with a bunch of people to do like a synchronized campaign where everything makes sense, to get a bunch of the creatives together and the one or two people actually contributing outside of that, to be in the room, there's a benefit to it, but that's the only benefit, that little bit of creative collaborative benefit. That's 1% of meetings, where I don't think that fast tracking to basically video calling as a meeting platform has been lagging for 5 years. This should have been going on for 5 years already. And for some people like me using Skype, it has been. But now that everybody has to do it, it'll be a silver lining to the pandemic that this is 5 years from being 5 years behind is caught up now. And we hopefully don't have to sit in pointless meetings in rooms that are far away ever again. Traffic, bullshit.
Oh, yeah, I'm with you. That's
drive to a meeting. And my favorite is when you've got a client who are very important and you have to yes sir, no sir, everything they say, and they're in Cape Town and you're in Joburg and they want you there for 9 o'clock meetings. Like even back in the day before the era of Zoom calls, it is highly unprofessional to me to expect anyone to travel from anywhere more than an hour away and have a meeting that starts before 11 or 12. Like, you got to wake up at 3, get to the airport at 4, catch a flight at 5, land at 7, get to the meeting at 9. You've been awake for 7 hours by the time the meeting starts. Rather just have me call you.
That's you being considerate. There are many other people who aren't.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to some other stuff, because we can talk to Rich about this later and hopefully find better ways of doing things. What do you got on your agenda, Sia? I know you've got a list of things you want to talk about.
All right, let's talk about these name changes that have a lot of people knickers in a knot.
Very
Do you know that it's actually not completely official, even though it was announced?
Mm-hmm.
So we still have about 3 weeks left, if you really have an issue with it, to object to these. So yeah, if you like your Port Elizabeth as Gubera, or your Port Elizabeth International Airport as that, and not Chief David Stearman International Airport, you can have time to actually set an email and send it to the government. Are you really interested?
I've never really been one of those people to write to the government, but in this case, I mean, do you think it's important?
I don't think the government are that big into reading from the people, so that's a good arrangement.
Yeah, good point. But I mean, officially, they do have to factor things like that in. What was it? Cigarettes were taken and banned because how many people actually complained about? Like 1,000 or something in the country?
You make a good point. Like, if you don't complain, then you can't complain after the fact. So you have to complain up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a South African philosophy, especially where the Virgin Active, where they recruit the people from Love Island. It's like, if you don't complain, you miss your chance. Never waste a good opportunity to complain. You've earned that anger, Corin.
Exactly.
They did do your coffee wrong for the second time.
Correct.
Yeah, so despite the Arts and Culture Minister Natum Teto's announcement on the Eastern Cape changes, giving the impression that they were set in stone, they really aren't. So whether you're a resident or anyone who's interested, you still have about 3 weeks to register objections. There are 4 email addresses that you can email, but the easiest one to remember is presidentrsa@presidency.gov.za. So presidentrsa@presidency.gov.za. And you just pop him an email and say, listen, Gubera does not do it for me. Port Elizabeth should be it.
And let me guess, Cyril will actually read that himself.
Yo, I'm going to start all of mine with, yo, what up, Prez? What up, Prez? To OG Heavy G, representing from the mean streets of the northern suburbs of Sandton. We got potholes, homie. What you going to do about it? Let's talk. Let's you and me. Let's powwow this and come to something that works.
Word up in these streets. And believe you me, there are people who care enough who will actually email, and the people
definitely.
who will object.
I can
writing
well
an
imagine.
angry letter used to be the final outlet. Like in the day of our grandparents and some of our parents, like, oh, don't make me get the stationery out and typeset. Like when you format a letter formally, it's got like the address and the thing on the one side and the date, and then I'm going all in with this. The person gets it, they just see it's formatted for formal, and they're like, oh shit.
Don't make me get the stationery out.
Yeah. Make me get the stationery out.
I love that.
I want a wax seal. And those are the coolest things, and nobody does them anymore.
What?
I want a pinky ring with something cool on it and a wax seal. Yeah. And when I send things to people, I'm going to seal it with a wax. I want to do it like, okay, offices, we just discussed, offices are not the same way they used to be, and they'll probably never be quite the same again. But in the traditional office setup, I'd love to just like take someone a very innocuous note, like you just give someone a piece of paper, but I'll always fold it up and seal it with the rubber, with the wax thing.
Gareth, I'm sure you have one of those.
I do actually. Yeah, I use one of those.
Of course you do. Does it have your own personal seal in it?
Yeah.
I'm going to have the pinky ring. It's going to have a seal on it. And when I use my seal, I'll seal it with the official seal of Gord Laws.
That's right. You can do that.
Any ringsmiths in the audience, please contact me directly, immediately.
The official seal is going to
be just a seal. And I'll use my seal to seal things.
The Gord seal, the great seal
official
of Gord.
Seal. Yeah, Gord Law's official seal.
Please,
I'll seal the things with my seal. Dude, it makes me so happy. Thanks for humoring me, Sia. Apologies. Please continue.
So I would love to see the official Gord seal and document.
I'm doing it, dude.
That's going to be so great.
And I've got a Cobra Kai dojo, and I need an official seal. My midlife crisis is going swimmingly.
Yes,
it must be a Cape Fur seal, you know.
Oh yeah, from Boulders Beach, where A Penguin Called Dave and How the Day Was Saved, soon to be released first book by Gord Laws, is set.
I'm so annoyed that my camera doesn't work. I've been trying sorry if I sounded distracted for the last 2 seconds or whatever it was, but I'm trying to restart the camera on this side. I don't even know what's going on. Very annoying. These are the teething problems that we knew we would have with YouTube. Anyway, you can see Gord and CS, so that's good enough.
Yeah, sorry about that.
We'll try to rejig the thing in a moment.
Random question, and I don't know if people care enough. Is Banksy still a big thing in 2021?
Sure. He's one of the biggest artists in the world. You know that, right? I mean, like Banksy.
Yeah. But also,
a fortune for doing. If you actually, first of all, I don't know if everybody knows who he is or not yet, because there was a time where he was actually an unknown person, except to people in the very, very center of the art world who, would invite him to cocktail parties and that sort of crap. But I think that there are still many of us. I don't know who the actual Banksy is, and there's speculation. It's almost like the guy who started Bitcoin.
No, Banksy stuff is cool though, but I haven't seen any new works. I mean, again, I've detached myself more and more from these kind of discussions, but I've seen like old works of his exhibited, and I've seen them being sold at auction, and like I haven't seen any like this. All of his political commentary that I'm thinking of is like from 5 and 10 years ago. I haven't seen anything much about Trump and that kind of stuff. But then if it is out there, I'd love to see it. It may well be, but I just haven't been keeping on top of it.
I don't know if I buy it anymore. Look, his identity is still not public knowledge.
You bought a Banksy? Wow, you have lots of money.
See what you did there, GC.
No, I still don't know if I buy it. I think it must be just people who are now capitalizing on this anonymous streak that's going on. Because a couple of days ago, there's been a new supposed Banksy artwork that's been revealed. It's on a prison wall. And what made me just start to question everything, a prison wall in the UK, it's quite a tall wall, and it's in the middle of this wall. There is no way that this person could have painted this? Firstly, when? Secondly, how? You would have needed some sort of scaffolding, and no one would have picked it up. I think they're now just scamming us and trying to make money with all of this.
If you can't trust Banksy to be subversive and non-commercial, who can you trust here?
But this is interesting. The art world is full of this kind of crap, right? It really is.
Yeah.
There's so much of this nonsense going on in the art world, and I know that artists will get upset with me for saying so, but really and truly, this stuff is just crazy. It's all about perception. It's all about how hot you are at the moment as an artist. And Banksy could probably charge, there are only a few living artists who can charge millions of dollars and millions of pounds for an artwork. And I think that there are people with money who would pay whatever whatever it cost to get Banksy to like do their wall at home or whatever. And those people do exist here. So, before you poo-poo it, think very
I think to be fair though, like you're talking about how commercialized art is, GC, and how it's all about who's hot right now, and it's it's all a bunch of bluster and bullshit, and the great artists are sitting with no one looking at their work on Instagram because they don't have the right schmoozing skills, and I agree with that sort of stuff on principle. But I think the thing with Banksy, and it's become a very commercialized thing because of how successful it was at being anonymous. Whether or not this is now ultimately leading to like $1 million commissions, and that is a different point, but certainly the appeal of it was that it wasn't, you didn't know who it was. They weren't trying to up their social profile and schmooze at cocktail parties. The work was profound and moving and made really, really impactful points. But of course, as a result of its own success, it's become the thing that it wasn't. So I think Banksy can get a bit of a pass for becoming commercialized. It's like Metallica. People are like, they sold out so that they could be on the radio. It's like, well, they sold out. They sold millions of records before they ever did that. So you can eventually do whatever you want, is my point.
I'm clearly not the target market because I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and I think we might have even covered it on the show here. But it was at Art Basel in Miami, which is this very tutti frutti art festival.
Art Basel.
Just
Basel. Art Basel.
Okay.
And this piece was on show there. It was a banana that was taped onto canvas by like industrial duct tape, and that was a piece of art.
Yes. Sorry,
but fresh living banana that was just duct taped onto canvas. Goodbye.
I remember being so bleak when I found out somewhere in my childhood that it was duct tape and not duct tape.
Yeah.
So much better if it was duct tape.
When you start talking about the banana at Art Basel in Miami, listen, you have to realize like the art world is not connected to reality. The things that people will pay for, the things that people will do to own a certain work of art or to be around a certain artist. And remember, we're dealing with like the top 1% of the top 1% of people. So a lot of people have money, but a lot of people have no taste in art. So the ones who have money and a taste in art think they're infinitely superior to the rest of us. And they're the ones who will go to Art Basel, see a duct-taped banana and go, oh my God, that's just spectacular.
Well, I mean, if it was duct tape, then I mean, it's pretty impressive that a duck can even tape something to a canvas. The thing about art is that it is by its nature the most subjective shit you get. Art and music, like there cannot be a right answer. So let people pay a lot for stupid shit.
Yeah, jeez.
I don't see a better way. I do not see a better way of getting people to spend their money stupidly if they have too much of it. So I'm in favor of this kind of thing. I think it's great. Hey, Rich Mulholland, how you, dude?
Ahoy, ahoy, lads!
I'm
Good
sorry
to see you, man.
See me. Yeah, my camera just went on the blink like 5 seconds ago, but we'll try and sort that out. In the meantime, it's good to see you, dude.
Thanks so much. Good to be here. It's great to be chatting to you guys again. It's been a while.
Yeah, way too long. And I know when you sent me a message a while ago and said, listen, you were talking on your show about how we can do video conferencing and meetings online better. And I know you're the expert in this, and it's taken us weeks to get it going. But here you are, finally on the show. So, I mean, first of all, you probably are thriving in this environment because I know what you're like. You just when things change, you just find new ways of adapting. It's your kind of superpower. What about the fact that people are still struggling with getting into this new thing. And many of us are already bored and annoyed with meetings and apps like the one we're on at the moment, where we get together every morning. But the technology allows you to do certain things that you couldn't have done before in a meeting. And in other ways, it does inhibit people's creativity or, their ability to communicate fluently. What are your feelings on all of this stuff?
Well, I feel like you've said a whole bunch of things that I don't know where like, how does this inhibit our ability to do things fluidly and to be creative? Like, I don't buy that hypothesis.
Like right now, my camera's not working, which is very annoying. But the technical,
yes, but it also means that you're able to be having a shit right now, and we don't know. Like, you could be sitting on the toilet and having a meeting with us. How incredible is that?
That is one of the most spectacular displays of bright side thinking I've ever seen, Rich. I'm gonna treasure this moment as a life lesson.
How did you know I was on the loo? That's why I switched off my camera. How did you know that?
Which is incredible, though, because your song doesn't have that echo. So, like, that is how high quality this show is.
In my imagination, Gareth's got a toilet in the garden. It's just lawn and pasture and some of the bunnies they have there. And then there's just this bog that sits.
Okay. Gord, that's on my imagination as well. And I'll cherish it. I'll cherish that visual.
Glad we could share with each other today.
Okay, so let's go back to this a little bit, right? I guess a lot of it is a decision you make about these. I'm able, first of all, let's talk about creativity. In the past, I was able to have a creative brainstorm with people that were in driving distance of my office. If we saw that as a bonus, that's great. And, we work with some cool people. Now I'm able to have creative brainstorms. In fact, we've just hired a new consultant to do our marketing. And the person we found that we wanted to work with is based in Australia. And then we've hired a scaling up coach to help us with some of the business things that we want to do. And the person we're working with is in Montreal. These people would simply not have been available to sit in the room before, and now they are. The geographical handcuffs have been taken off, and it's the best thing that's happened once you realize it. Deciding to be upset that you're not sitting face to face with somebody. The fact is, we know it took a couple of weeks for us to get this together. You know how much longer it would have taken if we all had to be in the same place. And that is outside of any kind of COVID restriction as well. That's just, practicality of things. It's the reason I used to struggle to come into the show is because I'd be traveling, then I couldn't do it. Think about how many shows I missed of those Monday shows for years because I was traveling. Whereas now that wouldn't even been an issue. It would have just been, okay, cool. Where's Rich today? And I would have joined the show. It wouldn't even have come across as an excuse. So for me, it's a level up. And I understand that people are talking about Zoom fatigue and they're feeling tired of this thing. I'm calling bullshit because Netflix hours went up an hour per person, an hour per human last year. So everyone complains about staring at a screen. Oh, I'm staring at a screen all day. I'm so fatigued of it. Turn it off and go watch a dude pet a tiger.
Yeah, and people are sitting glued to their phones all the time. Like I was saying, Rich, that for me, I'm not trying to be one of these. I was doing it before it was hip. It was more a case of like finding those clients and finding those people that were happy to deal with you and didn't act like, oh, I suppose it's fine. If Skype is all we can do, then cool. But I managed to forge a couple of good client relationships where it became pretty normal to operate on Skype. Also curious as to how Skype had this whole thing locked down for years, and then when it became the thing, just became last place. But that's a separate issue. So people are now just more accepting to the idea. It used to be like, hey, I'd like to throw out this bizarre, weird work parameter if it's okay with you guys, and hope that they're okay with it. And now it's just like we video call. I don't know what the big deal ever was, and I still don't know what it is.
For sure. And we've been through this kind of technological Luddites have been through these things like with the telephone and with every invention. Luckily, we know that this isn't new. We're not the first generation to push back on these things. I understand also that there is possibly a negativity to it. Like people can say to me, but it's a framing, right? So yes, but I'm finding it harder to switch off. So that's great. So I'm working more on weekends and nights where I wouldn't be working before. So I could think about that as a negative, or I could think about it that on Sunday, or in fact, the last 3 Sundays in a row, I did a coaching session with the CEO of one of the largest law firms on the planet who's sitting in Houston. Now, this wouldn't have been available. So I can see this as a negative thing, or I can see it as an opportunity to have access to humans. And to me, you've just got to decide on the frame you have. And I don't want to sound all motivation-y and rubbish, but you can see. So I think like the 18th of March last year, I wrote a blog post and said, what if this is the best thing that's ever happened to your business? I'm going to decide to act as if that's the case. And I haven't changed my stance on that one little bit.
So,
and every time I see people whining, sorry, Gareth.
Before you completely label me as a whiner, I'm playing devil's advocate here because I know that.
No, I know you are.
So, I mean, Rich, as far as I'm concerned, I never want to go back to the old ways. I think it would be horrible to have to find ourselves back in offices and doing officey things. And you know how that world just did not appeal to me at all. And I know that it didn't appeal to you either. And Gord loves this too. Sia and I had a meeting on Saturday to illustrate the point, which we would never have done before. If he'd said to me, come, we need to have a meeting on a Saturday, there's this idea I have, I would have said to him, go and screw yourself. There's no way.
Rich makes a really good point about how you could have you could get the benefit of an in-person brainstorm with people who are in driving distance of your office, and in some cases who are not quite, but still have to mission there from far. Like there is, I was saying before, there is some benefit I find to that energy of a creative brainstorm, especially in a creative meeting. But laws and restrictions notwithstanding, assuming things go to a point where people can do what they want ever in the future, you can still do that. I mean, right now you can't. Right now we're doing this out of necessity, and thank goodness, or so many people wouldn't be able to do their jobs and would subsequently lose their jobs. But when it goes back to normal, you can have the best of both worlds. I just don't see any downside in this becoming, I hate the word, but normalized. Where's there a loss to anybody aside from like, I'm looking at the screen too much?
But I even just want to say that just to back and again just to clarify, Gareth, like I never for a second thought that you were a voice of the opposition here, but I do understand the framing.
You did.
No. Like I'm very well aware that this is a level up in your mind. Like just the work that you've been doing is all stuff that wouldn't have been possible. The people you've had on your other show and things like this, just incredible. But my boy, or even on the brainstorm. So we did a brainstorm. I did a talk for Zoom actually last week. And all the brainstorms we did for that talk, which I believe was some of the best work I've ever done, was with people sitting remotely and sitting far away. And there's no creative limitation to coming up with cool ideas. In fact, all of us have front row seats to each other's faces. Yeah. Like we're all sitting close across the table. And I understand there's some studies that say that some human science says that when you're this close to a human being, you feel like, maybe there's a predatory, they're right up in your grill. But one of the easy fixes around this thing, I don't know what you guys are like, but I never have this full screen. Like you're a small little window in the top corner of my entire workspace. I'm not staring at this big ass screen things. I'm not feeling overwhelmed by all these faces.
I have to be honest. Maybe it's me being extremely vain, but I've always blown myself up. But because I also need to just...
Let's say that you being vain is already the answer, Sia. Sorry.
No.
I'm already shocked. I'm like, I don't know where this is going. You started with, I might be being vain.
I'm also Rich. I will speak to you now, not the other two. I'm hyper aware of how I am now perceived because I'm cognizant of being on a camera whenever we're in a meeting or the show. So now I need to look at myself like, am I sitting up straight, or is there a bit of a slouch, or what's that on the side of my mouth? And I think that has been a bit of a distraction for me.
Here's my Invisalign braces that I just took out because I realized staring at myself up close and personal, oh my goodness, you got shitty teeth, right? Like this is not okay. So, but I don't know if this is a bad thing. I think that there's a level up to this. I am building relationships with people that I wouldn't do before. And I think there's a frame, you just got to decide how you want to perceive this. For me, I'm just decided to look at it as an upgrade, but I don't even think that's a difficult decision. I'm doing a talk for Zoom. They invited 1 million people to that talk. Yesterday, I went out on an emailing list for Prezi, who I also know who sent that mail to 1 million people, 1 million subscribers. Like this is access that I literally never would have had before, and now I do because I decided to take it. And there's a whole bunch of human beings complaining. Oh, the other thing is we're not getting paid in dollars, because we are an international company that happens to be residing in South Africa. Everybody who's talking about leaving South Africa because their kids might not have a future here, that's all just changed. Your kids can live wherever they want in the world and work wherever they want in the world.
This is something that I completely agree with, and I wanted to squeeze in earlier, is this fact that like I've done a campaign for a really prominent agency based in Germany for a German car manufacturing brand last year. I'm working now with a consultant in Manchester, branding companies to do with renewable energy. And it's this guy who's based in Manchester, but he's Zimbabwean. And then he's brought on a South African designer and me, and we're working as an agency. But we found now that like, because of budget restrictions and economic challenges, etc., in Europe, they've got lower budgets for their freelancers, and their standard rates are either not going up as they should with time or coming down. But those rates still equate to 1.5 to double what is my high rate in South Africa. So, and the time difference is only an hour or two to Europe. So we're finding that like South Africans are performing really well in English-speaking European markets as advertising and marketing creatives, because we work hard. We tend to be either fluent or first language English, and it's like they're not like insulting slave labor, but their low rates are higher than our high rates, and it seems to be a real opportunity there that wasn't in place a year ago.
A massive opportunity. In this case, everybody wins. You know, the world perceives, it's one of the things we've discovered is as we've been working with more international companies, like, yeah, we know you South Africans are very creative. We're actually a bit worried that you might be. So the world sees us as this creative, highly functioning in many ways workforce. It is a huge opportunity. I can't understand, though. So many of the freelancers we work with are still working with only South African businesses and complaining about the rates. I don't understand. The tools and everything are available. I think the mindset is incorrect. And this is why, like, I would really want to go to war with this idea. Again, let's just talk about, if I can, like meetings. Sure. In the past, my average length of a meeting was 1 hour. Gareth, if you and I were meeting, I know, let's say you said, okay, cool, can we meet at 10? I would arrive, in Rivonia at 10 o'clock. Took me, like, let's say it takes, not too far, but let's say the average meeting would be half an hour to get there, half an hour to get back. And I would have put in my diary 10 to 11. That's the default. Correct. Now, the default meeting in my diary for every client meeting, in fact, the only meeting link that I send anybody, and now all meetings are scheduled on a little calendar link, which takes about 5 minutes for somebody just to say yes and book an appointment. There's no back and forth. All these meetings, the location is always the same. So that's super easy. No one has to worry about transit, are 30 minutes. All client meetings for Missing Link are 30 minutes, and all client meetings, even if you sit across the road, must be via Zoom. And the reason is because then we can record it. I no longer have to give internal briefs. If I sat with you guys, and if I was taking a brief right now about a presentation you wanted to do, I would simply take the recording of this and send it on to my team and say, please prepare a quote. There's no he said, she said, there's no mistakes. There is no more internal briefing. We have the recording. And I don't know if you guys have used tools like Descript. Sorry, Gord, do you want to jump in there? No.
I was gonna comment, but please continue.
Well, Descript is incredible, right? So if you go to, I think it's descript.com, right? Yeah. You record the meeting, whatever, you upload it to Descript, and then it creates an instant transcript of it. You just look at the meeting, you think all of the bit weren't relevant, so it's text. You edit the Word file, basically, and you instantly have the video, instantly. So you upload the video, say this video, you upload this exact thing to Descript. You just see all the bits at the beginning where we're talking about Gareth having a shit in his garden. You're like, I don't think that's appropriate, or that's the only stuff that matters. You delete everything else we said, and then you got a video about it.
You delete it as text, and it affects the edit in the video.
Yes,
that's genius.
Or you've got a tool.
I wonder
like
how it copes
Fireflies.
with South African accents, though. Like when you've got, South African accents, some mixed accents, and exotic accents like your own. It must be pretty interesting to see what Descript thinks you're saying. But obviously, you can get the gist of it, and that sounds like a pretty amazing technology.
Yes. But what you can also do is you could, if you've got a pro account or whatever, you actually just train it to your voice. So you do the voice training, takes 20 minutes. But then let's say I said to you, there are 3 main things that we can do things. And then I realized, oh, wait, there's 4. Then I go back in, I retype the word FOUR, and it changes my voice to say 4. It's like deep fake stuff.
See, that starts to make me think that there's demons involved. That's where that, technology, if technology is smooth enough, it's indistinguishable from magic. I start going, no. Like, we need to exercise a demon.
And the only thing that happened is the world was forced to accelerate. If we do not look back at this period of time as the greatest acceleration of technological advancement and lifestyle upgrades in the future, like I think this is the only lens we'll have. Another great one for me for meetings is like Fireflies. I don't know if you guys use Fireflies. It's an AI empowered basically bot that sits in your meeting. It records the whole meeting and does sentiment analysis. So it will tell you points where tensions were raised. It will also tell you, it detects of an action. So if I said, Gord, please will you email me next week, Thursday, about that brainstorm we have with the German firm?
I sure will, Rich, no problem.
Thanks, bro. You see what I did there?
No, I'm answering positively so that the record knows that I said yes.
Let the record state. But then what it will do is at the end of the recording, it actually highlights the actions. So it says, oh, okay, these were 3 of the actions that were mentioned in the meeting. It's not an exact science, but it's a crap ton better than my human memory. And so this is what we're sitting with now. So why would I ever want to have a meeting in a room? And also, I don't know if you guys have found it, there's a whole lot less politeness required.
Yeah.
So
small talk.
We sit down and we get to it. Yeah, sure, totally. If I want to schedule time to catch up with one of you, I would schedule time to catch up with one of you. That's actually what my human interaction is now for. It's now for lunch, right? And in fact, the other thing is, yes, I don't spend as much time with my colleagues. So you could argue, yes, but there's less social time. But myself and my colleagues are spending more social time with other humans close to us. So there's a difference. We've moved back to almost that old British model that you leave work at 5 o'clock, you walk home, you have your tea, and then you go to the pub, right? So social is built around where you live, not around who you work with. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Exciting for people who want to be able to travel and work. I mean, the whole digital nomadic lifestyle has become something of a cliche, and you associate it with like privileged hipster kids off on a sponsored mission. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, my entire business, the one that I'm working on with the kids' books and the work that I traditionally do, all of it can be done remotely. There's no benefit. It's only when your main clients are nearby where you live and you have to constantly be in those big horrific glass fish tank rooms. And another thing that I noticed as well with the whole remote working from South Africa to Europe is that everybody in the room, the virtual room, seems to have a purpose to be there. It's not like an obligatory meeting as often. You don't have 12 people in a boardroom and 8 of them are working on their computers or their phones.
Yeah, first of all, there's 3 things I want to unpack there. First of all, yes, I think you're absolutely spot on. And in fact, when you know that you don't need to be there, it's okay. You can now literally just check your email. It's the meeting's job to hold your interest. The second thing is just on the work anywhere. I don't know. Have you guys had Don Packett on the show, my old business partner? You guys know Don, right?
Yeah, I know him. I haven't spoken to him in a while. Though. Lovely guy.
They were like working, and I mean, we've also not spoken in a while, but he realized he could work from anywhere. They've sold their house and they decided, well, if we're working, why are we sitting in our house in Four Ways Gardens when we could live around different places? And they're taking 2 years to live in different cities every month or 2. And they're just doing their normal jobs, traveling around, working, being nomadic. It's just,
I'm trying to build up the European client base to do that, and it's all kind of interlinked. We were talking earlier about the opportunities to work across countries and time zones, etc., and currencies especially. It's also a real opportunity. Obviously, if you've got kids and you've settled down, but then that's your personal life path. That's not necessarily a work plan. If you have the ability and you wish to do that, it's now so much so you don't have to be like a travel blogger. People with real jobs can be digital nomads, and it's exciting for a guy like me.
Absolutely. The last thing on this point for me was pet hate. I don't know if you guys have to deal with it much, but I can't understand still when you can use this technology, you're doing it, and I jump onto a meeting, like a Zoom meeting with a client, and they join from boardroom 1, and there's 8 people sitting around a table. I'm like, guys, what are you doing? This is the most ridiculously inefficient use of technology. Like, we could all be looking at each other in the face. Now you don't know when you're speaking. You guys all look like ants to me. It's sweating this old technology is ridiculous.
I totally agree.
Throw it away.
There are ways to do. So one of the biggest tips you've given me this morning is that you don't have to have this video on your main screen. You can have a little icon, and that's all you need, because the rest of the time you actually shouldn't be like looking at people's faces or their backgrounds or any of that stuff, even if you're vain like Sia. What about the fact that some people, is it polite or is it correct to switch off your video to keep it on? There are people who have these preferences. What have you found in the many interactions you've had over the last year?
First, so one weird thing for me is Teams users, and Teams, obviously Microsoft Teams. I love Microsoft products. I use PC in every single way, and Teams is where happiness goes to die. So Teams users turn off their screens by default. It seems to me they just don't like to do that. I don't want to have a meeting with somebody, generally speaking, technical issues aside, that isn't willing to turn on the camera. If we're sitting there, it's kind of like it's hard for me. There's two things actually. I don't have a meeting with somebody who's not got any earphones, because earphones is the boardroom door being closed. Earphones is an etiquette that I can now know that my voice isn't being broadcast to a whole bunch of people, and I know what's going on. So when I see 4 people sitting with their cameras on with, like, for example, earphones, I know that everything we're saying is essentially protected by some veil of the golden circle of the meeting, if that makes any kind of sense, right? We're in a zone. This is our space. When the camera's off, I don't know who's in the room. I don't know what's going on, and it's difficult for me to know how free I can be. So I see it as a limitation. Okay. I also do think, like, people say, but I want to be able to look at people in the eyes. I can literally do that now. So I can always see the people I'm talking to. I just make them very small. And part of the reason for that, by the way, is if I make you guys big, my monitor's big. So if I want to now chat to Gord, I'm not looking directly at you there, but that's not looking at you because you don't exist there. You exist inside my camera. And it's why we need to push these little boxes small and close up to the screen. But yeah, so for me, I think it's personal preference and maybe business culture dependent. But I always want to see people. I want to do that. Otherwise, let's have a phone call.
I had to catch myself, being sensitive. Thankfully, it was not an issue. But I have a colleague who happens to be younger and female, and I brought her on to work on a project, and we're doing everything remotely. And I was having the conversation, and I'm trying to, I speak visually with my hands. Like, we need to put a thing here, and then there's lasers and a bear coming up, that kind of a thing. And I said to her, like, it's weird for me looking at this, just your initial on the screen. Can you put your video on? And she's like, okay, cool, let's put a video on. And at the end, afterwards, we carried on, and I didn't think about it again. And then I messaged her afterwards saying, listen, I hope I wasn't just like an old male guy talking work and saying, come on, sweetheart, put on your video. It's just, it feels like a phone call where only I can see myself otherwise. So I think, like, you need to acknowledge that it's either going to be visual or not. Like, it's basically a hands-free phone call if everyone's video is off. So if it's going to be a video call, let it be a video call for everyone, unless they really don't need to or don't want to, or like Gareth, their shit's not working. And if it's going to be a phone call on the computer, then it needs to be that, because it's weird if one person, it's strange for me to talk, especially if I can see myself in that little window, see myself.
The irony we got into that.
Yeah. That
see yourself, hear yourself.
Now Gord is broke.
While Gord's reconnecting, I must say, personally, for me, I would never feel any qualms if I was an older 46-year-old gray-haired man sitting in a meeting and a woman joined the meeting and while I was speaking was facing the wall. I would have no qualms turning around and saying, excuse me, it would be much nicer for me if you would if I could see you when I was speaking to you. I don't think manners, this equation doesn't make sense to me. If I join another company's meeting, though, in fact, when I'm doing a speaking gig, the first thing I say to everyone, hey, everyone, thank you so much for having me, blah, 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 blah. It would be incredible. This is quite lonely, staring into the void. I know that a lot of you are busy, but if any of you are engaged and you wouldn't mind switching on your cameras, it would be lovely to see that there's other humans out there. And instantly, blah, 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 cameras appear.
No, people like
you can
that.
Ask in a nice way. Yeah, totally.
Sure you can. Yeah. And I think we're all just figuring out a lot of these dance steps. So there isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution to this. But I do like the fact that we are able to translate, and what you've done here, for example, with turning on the camera and asking people to show you their faces. I think that we've got to figure out these rules, and it's not an imposition. I mean, you still got to get dressed up. You've still got to try and brush your hair and look decent. And if you're not going to go to if you're not going to go to the trouble of that, you're going to sit in front of your computer and expect that your camera can be off all day and you got curlers in your hair and everything else. I just don't think you're taking yourself seriously, let alone the meeting.
Dude, couldn't agree more. One of my frustrations is, I'm so sorry, I'm working from home and it's not really set up for this. You've had a year. Okay? Exactly. You've had a year.
Yeah,
like bullshit. I've gone through 3 iterations of cameras, 4 different lighting setups, probably 5 different microphones, just to get to the point. I've not spent a fortune, but you've had a year to figure out a somewhat acceptable way of that you could be comfortable turning on your camera. And I understand it's not always the case, and sometimes there's things. But the other thing is that everyone's forgiving. So the famous video of the British, interview with the kids running in the room, that's not even getting a mention now. What I mean, if that happened today and kids ran in the back of a government address, there would be whatever. That's how we live now. People are so accepting of everything. You just have to kind of show up somewhat professionally. If your kids run in the back, if a cat jumps on a screen, nobody cares.
Well, you see, this is, I mean, yesterday we recorded the TV show and Tony Leon was on and his dogs were barking in the background. And it became
shame.
It was something to talk about. He was embarrassed. He was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I was like, "This is hilarious. This is terrific," because we didn't know politicians and authors and people like that even were normal people before. Now we get to see them. These kinds of things almost humanize people a little bit more. And as long as you don't let it distract you to the point where you're not paying attention to the purpose of the meeting, I think it's all kind of cool.
For sure. But also, like, I don't know if you guys, can you hear that?
No.
Okay, so I'm banging 2 bits of plastic really loud together, really loud, because I've installed a tiny bit of free software called Crisp with a K, and you can't hear it. So we are now, again, we're now a year into this thing. With respect to Tony, he's a great guy. He should have figured out how to install basic level noise cancelling. In fact, even if it's a Zoom call now, Zoom, I don't know if you've seen now in Zoom's new settings, it actually has noise cancelling built in. I don't think it's as good as Crisp. And again, Crisp with a K, well worth checking out. I don't think it's as good as that. With Zoom, you can actually turn up the levels, and it actually has levels literally marked like dog barking is a setting. And then it will cut off dog barking and things like that. But like that, this is available now. And again, I don't want to take away from your point. It humanizes people, and I think that's amazing. The fact that people tease me, they say I've got bookshelves. The fact that I've got my board game shelves behind me is important because it's such an important part of who I am, and I love the ability to refer to it. It comes up in meetings. People say, "Is that books?" I say, "It's board games." It's a topic. It gets people to know me better. It humanizes me. I'm inviting people like you guys now into my home, and we're getting a sense of this. And I think it's just amazing. I think so many barriers have been dropped. I found relationships happen faster now because they have to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, okay, I think we're all on the same side here. Are there any other basic things like the software you just mentioned now that's really handy? Any other basic things that you think people should do? I mean, how much money should you spend on setting up a home system if you're doing 5 meetings a day? It's almost worth spending whatever it takes.
Right, but if you're doing 5 meetings a day, if you get 2 of those little ring light things, halo lights or whatever from Take a Lot, they're 299 Rand, right? So that's not expensive. I would suggest that possibly your biggest expenditure, actually, if you wanted to throw out money on one thing, probably your microphone first. But even then, they've got those little Samson Goes or I can't remember, the Samson Meteor you can get on Take a Lot. It's a really nice little microphone. It's very packable. It's small, and it can also be attached to an arm if you want to keep it close. So you don't have to go with like a podcast quality mic. And then your camera. I do think that if you've got, I've got this computer that I bought last year. It's like a really top range computer. Its webcam looks like it was from 1980, Russia. Like it's horrific. So I would suggest that you maybe consider buying I have the Logitech Brio as my backup on my second angle. And then I have a Sony ZV-1, which is my main camera. It's nice because it's got like power, like things like really cool. Let's just see if I can make this work now. Autofocus and stuff. So if I want to bring things in there, but it wasn't shockingly expensive. So you've got to decide where you sit. I'm a public speaker, right? I charge people to show up and speak on camera. I don't have permission to not be on top of this, but most people should just be somewhat decent. And I don't think that the term we use for people is claps. Okay, you're the stage manager of your environment. You need to control the camera, the lighting, the audio, the presentation in our world, and the set. And this is your set. So you just got to give some thought to, it doesn't matter what it is. It just matters how you placed it and how you framed it. And I just want people to be intentional about this thing. Just to say, all I want to do is to sit down in a meeting and think, somebody's put some consideration into how they've set this up. And I feel like as long as that is the case, it tells you something about them, and I'm okay. Having this up-nose camera shot with the window behind you, if you've got to this level of time now, a year in, and you've still not realized that a window behind you is a bad idea,
right?
And with respect, especially if you're a person of color, like Sia, like if you've got a big white glowing light, it's harder.
I am sitting in front of my windows because I need all of this light.
Totally, we all do, but it's just a thing. If we've not figured this out by now, I'm not sure I want to have a meeting with you.
Right.
Like,
yeah. I don't disagree.
This is such a long overdue conversation, and mostly because, Rich, I think there are people who are still coasting and using excuses a year in, and it's just not on anymore. Plus, there's so many of us who want to do these things properly, and if I think about how many people we've had on the TV show, we've probably had over 150 guests in like 30 episodes. And you'd be surprised at how many really, really smart, really in touch, technologically adapted, the kind of people who are on the leading edge. How many of them don't have any of this stuff, don't have any idea of how to set themselves up? It takes Sia sometimes an hour to get them all organized. And it's extremely frustrating.
It's actually crazy. Like, to the point, though, that it makes you think that, and I just think because of who you guys are, we launched a public speaking program, last year because this is where we are. I actually think that like a broadcast training program or something like this, something where you guys actually, every single guest is essentially a potential client for jumping on there, learn how to broadcast. Everybody in the world is a broadcaster now. Learn how to do it from a pro by a pro. And I think that you guys should have a video series that if it's not set up, you say, guys, I think you should go onto this thing, jump onto these things. And you can also jump on a group call once a month where Gareth answers your questions. I think you should be teaching people this.
You're basically giving us the intro to a new business. I love it.
Yeah, but I think that there is some value there. People need to learn how to show up as if they were you guys.
Yeah,
because this is an opportunity. So the fact is that you gave me the last shot in my video show reel. If you go to getrich.af, the last shot in my video show reel is me being on your TV show, because you gave me such an amazing opportunity and a platform. Geez, that thing did so well for me, guys. Like, I got so much feedback and content and people reaching out that I haven't spoken in years. Your reach is incredible for me. Great. Thank goodness I made the effort to show up. And even then, it was like a different camera wasn't as good. People need to respect the attention that they are being given and show up accordingly.
We're out of time, but thank you so much, Rich, and thank you, Gord. I don't know where he went; he disappeared somewhere in the broadcast. But
his internet died.
And lots of love to everybody on your side, and we'll get together properly in person soon.
Awesome, looking forward to it. Thanks so much, fellas.
Be good.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. And Sia will give us some of his tips of how he looks so fresh every morning tomorrow.
Goodbye.
Yes. That's very good. All right. I will also sort out my camera. I'm sure that it's just some tiny software glitch. So we'll be back on YouTube tomorrow morning on cliffcentral.com. We've got our app, which is running all the time. If you prefer Webinar Jam, I mean, there's so many ways you can get us right now. There's no excuse. And all of them are easy. Not one of them is complicated. So we want to see you. We want to hear you. We want to have you join in too. Otherwise, there's no point in us doing this. Thank you very much for being part of it today. It is just after 8 o'clock, cliffcentral.com. We will see you tomorrow, bright and early at 6 o'clock.